language and descriptions about myself and Asher over the last 8 years. Right? If you look at the way, the descriptive language of our engagement in political debate, if someone comes and says something, we say we disagree, or someone describing me as thin-skinned, I'm going to use a language here, but we all know the language. I've been chased down these streets, and Alpan's with me over here. We were school kids together. You here? Yeah. In our era, in our group, because we were all together, we got chased down the street by people calling us all sorts of names. People drive past us when we go into school, telling us to go back to our own country. As I said to one idiot, if I was thin-skinned, we wouldn't be here today. Right? We've built up skin of height, and we're not even the first generation. This is the first generation to deal with it even more than us. So all that language, there's an interesting review to be had of live 24/7 and all these little platforms in the city.
So, full disclosure, you and I, as I said, go back, but we sort of had a brief conversation before this particular conversation, and you said, Jules, ask me any question you want. So, yeah, we go underneath the skin of this thing, for sure. So, you guys are, and I say you guys because we also have Asher Craig here, who was your deputy. Okay, well, don't make me one of the studies, yeah? That's fair enough, right? So, Asher Craig, who is your deputy, and how did you find, through the lens of race, and I'm sure in your books and future interviews and speeches that you'll have, and you're coming towards the end of your term now, but through the lens of race, did you find that you as a leader were treated differently? And it might be not were, but was.
I just want to pop in and say something about that, by the way, because this is not by design, but this is a really interesting bookend. This is the last public outward-facing engagement I will do as mayor. I finish on May the 5th. Do you know what? I shared a story. It's in this very room that I had my very first public-facing engagement with a candidate after I was selected.
Serendipity.
Well, let me give you the description. There was a stage here. It was a property developers conference. A lot of people in the legal profession. I was on stage. I was on the left of the room. Next to me were 3 white men, late 60s, 70s, whatever age, retired white men. There were 3 people in the room who were not white. One of them was me, and one of them was my mum's friend. Right?
And the other was your shadow?
And that's it. And I was on this stage, and I said to myself, I had to deal with my own dealings, right? My own dynamics. And I was sat on stage, I thought, no one is looking at the stage and saying that 6-foot shaved-headed black guy looks like the Mayor of Bristol. Because with leadership, myself and Asher, when we were on the stage for the Bristol Legacy Foundation, I wanted to say, this is what leadership looks like, right?
So we'll talk about the Bristol Legacy Foundation because some people here won't know what that is, but yeah.
Don't forget, that is quite a big journey, and I think over the last 8 years we got used to it, but even I was talking to Guy earlier on when I was at a Black Development Agency with a consulting for black groups, leadership didn't look like myself and Asher, and I have to do it myself. It's a really interesting bookend to be finished here, but yeah, I mean, look, I got on a limb here. I have to be incredibly careful the way we talk about race. Because you know that even, and I would tell you, and Asher would tell you this, we get stuff from the political right, I even get it from the political left, right? They don't talk about race, you'll divide the movement. I had that language when we try to bring a bit of a race analysis to class in the politics. I did an interview with Edward Colston from Radio 4 the other day. We started at the Colston plinth, walked through the city, and then we went to the exhibition. I'm going to tell you what happened. We get to the Colston exhibition, we got the placards around it. There's a guy, a white guy in dreadlocks, full Montpellier kit, glaring at me over Edward Stolten's shoulder. And you know what he said to me again? He said, what would you say to people who say you're worse than Edward Colston? Like 80,000 Africans kidnapped? I didn't get into it with him, I just said I wouldn't say anything to them. Because don't cast your pearls before swine. But the point is, what? So either he's diminishing the significance of what Colston was involved in, or he's just making stuff up about my and Asher's legacy within the city. We've had that a lot. So that experience of race and class in Bristol has been inseparable from my experience in Bristol. But I said we're wary of speaking about it because then people react on all fronts if we start talking about it. You know, and you know how it goes, chip on the shoulder, angry, bitter, race card, and all these sorts of things. So it's only interested company that we generally we talk about. But I want to just say, as honest to Asha, part of my survival of resilience is Asha, right? There's someone I can talk to who knows what's going on, and someone I know has had my back, and I've got Asha's back. But let me tell you something as well. The very first council meeting, when Asha got up to speak, you see the way the chamber reacted to her. Baying, shouting, so bad that Helen Godwin, who was in my cabinet, was crying. She said, Helen was in my cabinet. Helen said, they have never treated me like that in the chamber. And no journalists pick this up, right? Because they don't see it. So our experience of being black in politics in Bristol has not been fully communicated in the city. And I think we're pretty pragmatic, actually. We make space for people, and that's why we've got Legacy Foundation and people come together. But there are dynamics to our experience that have been pretty savage, actually, isn't it, right? And then the challenge is when we speak up, you know how it goes. Oh, you stood up, you're aggressive, you don't know, it gets flipped back. So it has been an interesting time.
Because there have been various reports that have come out about how black leaders are treated differently the higher you go. And I think what you use the phrase is we've got the glass ceiling and the glass bottom.
Sticky floor.
What do you call it?
Glass ceilings and sticky floors.
Tell us about that.
Well, glass ceiling, you bump your head, the sticky floor you can't take off. So you hit from both sides. I heard a black police officer use that phrase a few years ago. I thought it was very powerful. Got to push the button, Jules.
How'd you do? No, I think it's right out. No, thank you. Yeah, no, it's right. Yes. I love the advice that I'm getting it. It is changing my life. But back to something, certainly in the circles that I'm in, one of the sort of thoughts that we have is that the dynamic of tackling inequality through a lens of race, the idea of diverse leadership, it's come a long way in the last 8 years. I mean, you're on the eve of going to your new adventures, but it's at a time where actually we have, if you look across the UK, we can see they're either black, brown, or female, and therefore some may argue that diversity wins. But in terms of your own journey, as you come towards the end, or the next chapter, it's certainly not the end. I mean, how do you feel about the state of race and leadership and the quality, the quality, not equality, the quality of our current leadership? And I'm talking government, prime ministers, first ministers.
I'm dismayed by it. I'm dismayed by some of the people with black and brown skin in positions of leadership that have supported policies that have entrenched or further disadvantaged people from Africa and Asian continents. To have the Prime Minister we have and the former Home Secretary whose height of a political dream is to have people on planes going back to Rwanda. That's not a political vision. And I was thinking of reflecting on it the other day, this whole argument about take back control of the borders, that is a fake offer to people who have no control over their lives, right? I went, after the statue was pulled down, there was the counter rally, right? I think this is a really important reflection actually, because I think it's more interesting than the statue. Statue got pulled down, thrown in the harbour, that's poetic and all that. And I said at the time, I've got to hold a number of things true at the same time. I'm Jamaican. Actually, I was going to share at the beginning. One of the most profound moments of my time as mayor was I was in the United States a year and a half ago with my family, my Jamaican family, and my cousin said, "Oh, I've done our family tree," and he pulled out a piece of paper, and if you go back, great great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-great-grandfather was called Samuel Richardson. And next to his name, 1865, hung by the British. What was he hung for? For participating in the Moran Bay Rebellion.
Now let's talk quickly about the Moran Bay Rebellion, because it's one of the most important rebellions in Jamaica, led by Sam Sharp. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I don't do a history. I just say he was hung for fighting for rights and independence. And I was just talking with someone earlier on. I was given my State of the City just a couple of months later, and I honestly got choked up. Because I thought, when my great-great-great-great-grandfather was on the gallows about to be hung, did he think that was the end? Did he have hope? Or did he ever conceptualize that one day his great-great-great-great-grandson would be mayor of the city that at one point was one of the biggest slave ports in the UK? You know, I find it touching. And actually, when we think about, you know, all our elders in the front row here, all of their sacrifice that they've put in is made meaningful by what we do today. And actually, I make my great Samuel Richardson, I don't know how many greats. I make his death meaningful by what I do, right? And any hope, any slither of hope he had, I can make it meaningful. And that's our responsibility today. Which is why I sometimes actually in the conversations around race and equality, I like your approach. It's positive. Let's make it happen. We're not rose-tinted glasses. We're not in a world where if you want it enough, it happens. The world's not fair. It's hard graft, and like you said, it's hard yards. It's not all glamorous. It's not all banners and protests. It's making hard yards, going into the room, compromising, cutting deals, right? But there are those people who go out and get on with that stuff, and then there's those people who sit on the, I call them touchline prophets. They're on the touchline pointing out how everyone's failing. You know? But we need the people in the game making the most of the moment, making the most. It was Reuben Carter. Have you heard of Reuben Carter, the Hurricane, the boxer? It's a great line. Those who bemoan their lack of opportunity often fail to realise that small doors can lead into big rooms. That's the mentality. I love that. A man who did 25 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit stayed with that level of wisdom. So I think that's our responsibility at this moment in time.
So, if you and what you do matters, and it does matter and has mattered, looking back on your time in office, what are sort of the things that you are most proud of? You know, but equally the things that you might have been surprised by, maybe disappointed by, and that's not necessarily what you did, maybe the circumstances in the environment you may have found yourself in. And what is the one thing you would have wished you got done that you didn't? So there's a lot of questions there. So basically, what frustrated you, what made you the most proud, and what next?
So listen, I'm going to do a little list here, right? Just shut my figures on. So way back in 2010, when Barack Obama was president, and I'm wary about calling about Barack Obama because we was always a pound shop Obama. I'm not claiming to be like Obama, but I say the framework is, when I looked at Obama, I thought, your first job is to get elected. So we get a win and we keep bad people out. An African-American friend of mine in DC said, we don't vote Democrat because they'll do anything for us, but we know they won't do anything to us. At the time, I thought that was really cynical. Over the years, I've come to see that as very pragmatic. Just stop bad things happening. That's all I need you to do. We'll crack on. Just stop it. Barack Obama, just get elected. Next job, be credible. Make it possible for leadership to look like this. And I would say, I think one of the things I'm most proud of, and dare I say this, right, to judges, we've offered credible leadership, right, with Asher. So if I talk about my thing and then I'll go on to a story about Asher. I've been chair of Core Cities UK, the network of the 11 biggest cities. In Geneva in December, I was the city leader that spoke at the United Nations representing the offers of 150 cities on climate migration. The first time a city leader had spoken. I was in New York, the first leader alongside the Mayor of New York's team to speak into Global Compact on Migration. I've been co-chair of the Global Parliament of Mayors. I sat in a room with George Soros. I've sat and chat to Mike Bloomberg about cities. These things are happening, right? And from me being on the end of the stage thinking leadership don't look like me, it does. And I think we've been credible. Asher, I went to Bordeaux, and this is not the first time I've had this around Asher. I went to Bordeaux because we were signing an MOU with the Mayor of Bordeaux. Well, if you remember, there was a bit of thing about there was a riot in France, so the king couldn't go to France. So then he rearranged his diary, and then so it was that he was going to be in Bordeaux while we were signing this MOU. So I get to Bordeaux, James Cleverley's there, who was the Foreign Secretary at the time. We've got a Navy frigate.
I never won.
Proper event, right? The mayor of our UK diplomat to France obviously comes down from Paris because the King's there and the Foreign Secretary. What's the first thing that the diplomat says to me when she gets there? I met your deputy mayor. She's amazing. This is our Foreign Office. I mean, it's credible. And I think we've represented the city, and I've laughed with Asha about this, we've represented the country. And I hope that both within our communities, right, for our young people, they now have a picture of leadership that looks like them. And I hope that within White Bristol, and I'm mixed heritage, but I'm going to use my categories pretty bluntly, in White Bristol, when they look at people who look like us coming forward again, that they will, I'm not saying that everyone default said, oh, it can't look like that, but we live in a world in which we don't look like leaders. And I hope that there'll be some acclimatization where credible leadership can look like me, can look like Asha, and look like you all. What I wish we'd got done, mass transit, including underground.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Nothing's going to happen now. We've talked ourselves out of it. Look, it's a classic Bristol thing. We've allowed historic failures to undermine present-day possibilities. This is the reality of it. We got to transport 600,000 people in and out of the city every day. Our population is 470,000. The workday population is over 1 million. Right? You need a chapter change in our offering. If you want a mass transit system, it needs to be segregated and it needs to go through the densest parts of the city. That means you have to go underground. Designs itself. So tell me what it looks like if you start to put tram lines up Gloucester Road. Well, how long are you going to close Gloucester Road while you're putting the tram line up there? And no buses, nothing. Those businesses gone. And it's madness. And a tram needs about 20 metres width to go both directions. Gloucester Road at points is 11 metres. So what are you looking at? CPOing. No councillor's going to sign it off. So you go underground or you get nothing. And ironically, once you start adding in the complexities of bumping into utilities and illegal, the overground option potentially becomes more expensive than underground. Now, in the city, from the Combined Authority to our local opposition, even the Green Party, just come out saying this is all poo-poo, it can't be done. At the same time, the National Infrastructure Commission identified Bristol, alongside Manchester, Leeds and Liverpool, as one of 4 cities that should take a share of £20 billion to invest in mass transit. So there's more belief outside Bristol. But now, if it takes 100 million to get an investable proposition around mass transit ready, no one's going to come and spend even £1 million to get an investment proposition ready for Bristol when they know that there's outright local political opposition and the public narrative is no. So we have literally talked ourselves out of the possibility of a mass transit solution for Bristol. So we're going to have the 20, 30-year-old patch and mend approach on buses that has no resilience in it. You know, a car breaks down in a lane, the whole city grinds to a halt. That's been incredibly disappointing.
And so that's a
housing delivery, by the way. Got houses built.
So your housing you're proud of, the mass transport system is a frustration and a disappointment for you. And going back to the piece that you were talking about, what leadership looks like, and referencing your Deputy Mayor, Asha Craig. There was a point, I think around 2017, 2018, when I saw something I thought I would never see in my lifetime. And that was seeing an elected mayor, a deputy mayor, a ceremonial mayor, a high sheriff, and a lieutenant, all black. I thought an incredible thing. And so it is possible, and I think, you know, as a city, we need to kind of recognize that happened in a city that still has a bit of schizophrenia with its history.
I tell you, there was a time, and again, I'm not getting into the journalism, but, you know, most people don't interact with real politics, they interact with a journalistic interpretation of politics. And I'll tell you something that was never commented on. There was a full council meeting, right? At that full council meeting, Denise Murray, our Director of Finance, a black Jamaican woman, was sat in as Chief Exec. Our Head of Legal at that time was Shazia Daya. So in the full council meeting, you generally have your chief exec, your head of finance, and your head of legal all on the top. It was us. And I said, I remember I said to you, Asher, but no one said anything. You know, it wasn't picked up like, wow, this is a thing, because they don't want to acknowledge that, they don't want to make space for that, whatever little agendas that's going on. But that was for me, is an incredibly significant moment, as like you said, even on the death of the Queen. I think, I was walking with Peaches, was it yourself? You know, the three of us walking over to sign the Book of Condolences in the cathedral again, three or four black people walking over, and I said to Peaches as we walked over, this is, you know, I'm not making it about this because it was about the Book of Condolences and the death of the Queen, but wow, at the same time.
It's just an observation. Yeah. And when we look at the observation, and when you talk a little bit about your frustration in the political system, and sometimes how Bristol can talk, I refer to her as her, can talk herself out of doing stuff. What are you possibly worried about when you leave office, when your time comes, 6th of May, and you are no longer mayor, you've moved on to your new adventures, you're fully stepping into that. Is there anything that you're worried about that the city may backtrack on? We already know where it is with a mass transport system. Is there anything you might be worried about it undoes or it doesn't do quick enough?
I can't afford to do that. I can't afford to worry about it. I've had my time. It's 8 years. Ashley's had time 8 years. I'm concerned about the committee system, but I can't worry about that. During that whole referendum, and by the way, in trusted company, look at the photos of the celebration of the end of the marathon. These are things that some of us talk about. Look at the photos. Everyone cheering, we got rid of the mayor.
Oh, right.
But they didn't get rid of me because I said I'll do 2 terms and I'm standing down. I said in the referendum, I'm going to say something at the beginning, and what I'm going to say is I don't think it's a good idea to move beyond the mayoral system. In fact, I actually think, my opponent in the 21 election, I think would have stood a really good chance. And beyond party, I think it probably would have been a good mayor actually, and it would have been a good system.
Is that Sandy?
Yeah. So I lamented the loss of the position and the structure of the form of governance that's befitting of a modern global city with a 15 to 17 billion pound economy. I don't think what we've got fits the needs of that economic entity. I said I would share my concerns about it at the beginning, then I'm not going to say anything else. It's over to you. If you choose to vote for that system, you have to live with it. And I can't expend any more. What I will say is I'm not going to be involved in Bristol City Council politics. I'm not going to be on the touchline chipping in, giving my views. That's not what I'm going to do. I'll do other things, and I'll be around. But I have to put that period of my life now in the rearview mirror. I had 8 years. We did what we did. We didn't get done what we didn't manage to get done. It's over to you now for the city to pick up and move forward. So I have to avoid that area of kind of fears and worries, really.
Well, that does naturally lead on to a question I'm sure every person in this room has, and I certainly do. So what next for Marvin Rees? Once you've moved on to your new adventures, is there any exclusive tidbits or news that you could share with us amongst trusted friends? There's no media, any media anymore?
No camera filming. By the way, I hope the tone doesn't, I have to be really careful because I hope the tone doesn't come out like frustrated. We use that word a couple of times. Clearly there's an element. Look, well, we've been ferociously ambitious for Bristol. Right? I read about Channel 4 relocating from London. I come into my office, I said, what's going on? Someone said to me, yeah, we knew they were moving, but we didn't think we'd ever get it, so we didn't raise it. I said, you don't get to make that decision. What did we do? We bid for Channel 4. We got Channel 4. We've got the homes built. We hosted the Global Parliament of Mayors. As I said, we ended up chairing core cities. 2 days ago, we had about 25 members of staff on the Foreign Commonwealth office here, all right, for a day and a half. And why did they come here? Because they wanted to look at what we've done, particularly around decarbonisation, housing delivery. I've been at the last 3 COPs, the big global climate conference, not because I've put my hand up and asked to go, but because we've been asked to go, and then someone says, we'll pay for you to go there. And again, it's not all about me. It's all those people that do the hard yards invisibly and then roll me out, it feels like sometimes, to say something about it. So the city, we've been phenomenally ambitious, and that has got traction, both nationally and internationally. I even found a card in my office today written by Tom Cochrane, who's the chief executive of the US Conference of Mayors. I mean, that is representative of all the mayors across the United States, writing a card to me and to Bristol saying thanks for hosting. We've had that. Next for me, just a little quip, by the way. I was being interviewed on a radio station, and someone said to me, some people are saying you're just trying to make sure you're all right when you leave office. And I said, I am.
Yeah, no brainer.
I've been poor. I don't want to be poor again, It's not good, It's not enjoyable. And actually, I'm fighting for a city, but along with the You Think of Problem, Bristol 2030, a city in which every household has at least one person with a median income. People need to be able to pay their bills, you need to be able to live with dignity, do stuff for your children, be hospitable, do things for people. So I have to pay my bills, the book coming out, I'll do some talks, across the UK, maybe, a couple of places around the world.
The book?
Yeah, it tells my story a little bit and all that type of stuff.
What's it called?
Well, Last Mayor of Bristol. May as well take opportunity.
That does seem to be quite a pithy and catchy
I liked it.
Yeah.
It's called Last Mayor of Bristol. Let's see what happens. I test on a personal tack, actually. And I mean, there are some people like, say, I've known since I was a child in here and have known me. There are people that know me that I didn't know because I was too young when they knew me from my dad and I used to play cricket at Bristol West Indies and the guys' tutelage as well. It's actually called Last Mayor of Bristol, Let's See What Happens. Because one of the testimonies I give to young people is a series of moments in my life journey. People have just said, no, you can't do it. So I remember I went to my school teacher, I was being naughty at the time, but I said to him, I want to join the Royal Marines. Do you think I could join the Royal Marines? I said something like that to my careers teacher. He said, you have to be really good, Marv. I wouldn't bother trying if I was you. Right? And you know what? I didn't do it, but I went down and did all the tests. I went to Livingston, and I passed all. And I failed the medical. I got an eye condition. It's the last test you take. But I was going to be the first British-born Black Royal Marine officer. Apart from my eyesight, I didn't get to go in. That's happened a few times. The latest one, just before I ran for mayor, actually, I was in the kitchen. I was working at the NHS, and I was in the kitchen, and I said to a colleague, I put myself in for the mayoral election, and she said, "Oh, they'll never vote for you." Just like that. Never even thought about it. That's more dangerous, right? It was a subconscious thought. But in all of those times, I found serially, I've discovered, I didn't do it on purpose, but I've often said, well, let's see what happens. When I was dismissed as a mayor, and I did my first interview, it's in my book actually, when David Cameron came to Bristol, the referendum was starting, we were at the Marriott Hotel, and everyone who wanted to be mayor was there, right? Because they had to get on Points West, right? And the reporter of Points West interviewed everyone, didn't interview me, and then it was my turn, and the camera came off stage. He said, "Oh, I'll wait there. I'll come back and interview in a minute." And everyone needs to get interviewed. And then so we went off interview Cameron. And I'm waiting in the room like this. Everyone's leaving. They start taking down the speakers and that. I'm starting to feel a bit cute about it. And he comes back and he says, "Oh, I ain't got time. Maybe next time." I was humiliated. I felt absolutely humiliated. I wasn't even worthy of an interview. And in that moment, again, I said to myself, well, let's see what happens. Yeah. Once we start debating, once we start talking, and that's why it's got that subtitle, because I've just found, it wasn't on purpose, as I said, but I found that that's what I say to myself when people have dismissed me or undermined or any of that. And I've encouraged young people, invest in your character, invest in intellectual strength, invest in your physical ability, invest in your spiritual strength and have a goal, and just do the work. And then just keep driving through and see what happens.
That's good advice. And outside of, you said you're not really going to sort of stay involved with the politics of Bristol, you're not going to be chipping in from the sidelines. etc., etc. Is there any sort of adventures that, will you stay in Bristol? Will you decide to take your talents to the wider world, as you have done in representing Bristol on the world stage?
Well, I can't represent Bristol on the world stage anymore because I don't have the mandate. I've been asked to go to other countries and speak, and I'll have a role ongoing support with Asha and Marty and others with the Bristol Legacy Foundation. I was just before I came here, I was actually on a Zoom call with Minister Jordan from Barbados, and we were just talking about Story House and Legacy Foundation and how we do something with Barbados, the east coast of the United States, the west coast of Africa. So that triangle, that loop, that was one of kidnap, murder, exploitation, rape. Actually, it's also a loop that evidences our resilience, our overcoming, our survival, our contribution. And that's the story we want to be involved in telling as well. So I'll do some international stuff, yeah. And well, let's see what happens, right?
So I've got one or two questions before I want to open it up to the floor. We are at the Paul